Welcome to Retaining Purpose, a podcast about staying anchored to what matters most, especially when the pace of life and leadership picks up. I'm your host, Randy Volk. Today, I am joined by Ken Vowels, a leader who spent decades thinking about water not just as a resource, but as a responsibility. His work in sustainable systems and municipal leadership has helped shape how communities think long term. This conversation isn't just about water, it's about leadership, legacy, and how we choose to steward what we've been given. Ken, welcome to Retaining Purpose.
Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
We've known each other for several years now. You have been a catalyst in my life for a direction that I am now going in. Walk me through your background. How did Ken Vowels end up passionate about water management?
Well, I started in golf. That's where I first got my start as a young man. Did that for a decade, working my way up to superintendent, and really kind of fell into the water management side on the golf course. We also had a resort attached to that with rescom type irrigation around it. And irrigation is what grabbed me. Turf management was fine. I really enjoyed it, but the water management side, I just found fascinating. Learning about hydraulic principles and pipe sizing and matched precipitation, distribution uniformity. That grabbed a hold of me. Once I was done with golf, I started my own business. I really got into new tech starting my own business once I sort of got educated through the IA. That's where I first got my Certified Irrigation Contractor, my CIC designation.
How long ago was that?
That would have been...
Not looking to date you here, by the way.
Yeah, well, I'm getting up there. I'm getting a little long in the tooth, but it was probably in my 30s.
Okay.
So I'm now 59. So that was 20 years ago. But that kind of put the science behind what I knew to do, and many contractors are like that. I do this because I've always done it, and we know it works. But to put the science behind why we do that, it took me to the next level. Once I got into newer tech, and it was new back then, I think you remember from my presentation from the Water Summit a couple of months ago, I had a BlackBerry. We actually installed the first cellular modem on an irrigation system, and we went after municipalities to manage their sports fields off-site. And that was flow management. That wasn't even, looking at water conservation in any way, shape, or form. So, we knew when the irrigation was on, we knew when there was a problem, and we would deal with it. And that's how it got started. And then it really started to go from there into, well, if municipalities aren't hiring the right people, they're not educated on that side of things, what about water conservation? Water conservation came to my radar where I did most of my contracting. We were pulling 90% of what we did. We pulled out of bodies of water for irrigation.
Yeah,
and we had troubles even selling a rain sensor. I have lots of water, and we tried to educate the homeowners, saying, okay, well, if it's still coming on and you have 3 weeks of steady rain, now you've oversaturated, you've wasted all this water, not necessarily.
It's running down the street, it's into the gutter, into the storm sewer.
So we then fine-tuned our sales approach into they're no longer an option. You're getting one with we're going to do it for you. So coming from Ontario, so we did that for 17 years. We sold our company. We moved out to Alberta in 2012. And the first thing, being new to the province, we moved to the city of Calgary.
What brought you out here?
Our kids.
Okay.
Our kids. Yep. So our daughters came to U of C and stayed. And my wife is from the West originally, and she wanted to come out here. So it was time for a change.
Yeah.
So landing here, the first thing that I noticed was, okay, we don't have as much water here in the province as Ontario does.
Yeah.
And yet it was the wild, wild west with irrigation. I would be driving to work and seeing irrigation systems running in the rain, and I'm like, oh my God, like they're pulling water out of the river that's dependent on glacier snowpack,
Yep.
and
Reservoir capacity.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's when I really
And that's back in 2012.
2012. I noticed there was a problem.
Yeah.
So back in 2020, that's when I started to preach the word to contractors, saying,
Right.
one day you're not going to be allowed to use potable water for irrigation unless you have some sort of smart control and measure and report on what you're using. And I've been preaching that for years now, falling on deaf ears.
So 2012, you come out west. So right now, people can probably see SiteOne Landscape Supply on your shirt. When did you start with them? Because that was really what got you talking to the other contractors, right? That's what opened that door.
Yeah, so in 2012, my first position here was with Corix Water Products. That has since sold to Iconics. I was there for 4 years. I kind of moved the needle, and they weren't really supporting the irrigation industry. They're a waterworks company.
Yeah.
I brought it to their attention that unless we invest in more inventory and people were not going to be able to grow the division, didn't happen. So I decided to move on. I went for a year to MCO, and then SiteOne came calling and made me an offer, and that was 8 years ago. So, SiteOne has been the greatest company to work for. They have a good culture. What I really appreciate about this company is if you don't fit in their box, and we're going to talk about it later, I think, about what some of the struggles have been, and maybe we'll cover it then. But they've allowed me to grow, but it hasn't been easy to step outside of their box to grow. Yeah,
big corporate company, publicly traded. Yep. So there's systems, there's processes in place.
Right.
You're a guy who flies by the seat of his pants in some situations, right? Passionate, entrepreneurial. Yeah. Sometimes those things have a tendency to collide, but overall, you and I have talked about this a lot. They've been hugely supportive of the messaging you're trying to get out there. Yeah. So with that journey, what are some of the, I would say, key takeaways in today's environment? Because a lot, even since 2020, a lot has changed. Where are we at today? How has your messaging had to change between 2012 coming to Alberta, 2020, having this kind of shifting moment, and where are we at today? Have you seen the needle move on the messaging?
Yeah, I believe the needle is starting to change, and I think climate change is becoming more accepted. The water supply demand is growing. The supply side is the same, if not worse. Shrinking glaciers, etc. It's been a challenge in the way that we've been educating from the bottom up. So contractor level, home level, homeowner level, those types of things that just doesn't move the needle. I think one of the biggest challenges being in distribution was anytime we tried to relay this message on the importance of water conservation has sort of been, it's a sales tactic. We're just trying to sell you something. So I have changed my messaging around that. Like, we can sell you anything. So we want to, tailor the right solution for you, whether you're a homeowner, whether you're a municipality, a school district,
sports field, golf course, whatever.
Right. So we can sell it all to you. And even if we don't, we want to educate you to make sure that you get the right product. Again, the product is just a tool. And we also mentioned that, hey, water management is a process. It's not a product. Contractors are not going to help you once they're done. They're going to install it. They're going to walk away because they're not set up to manage. So therefore, internally, you need to hire that resource. You need to have a person that is managing based on the information these tools are giving you. And that needs to be internal. And if you don't have it internal, then you need to hire a company that specializes in grow.
Right. So one of my biggest issues that I take nowadays somewhat with manufacturers is the terminology smart controllers. Drives me insane, right? The controller has really, really smart technology, but at the end of the day, it's going to take a person on the back end to make that technology actually do what it's intended to do.
Correct.
Right? So on your end, as somebody who works in sales, yet messages outside of sales, which is unique, right? And we're going to talk about the Water Management Summit in a little bit here, but how do you walk that line, right? Between, hey, I have something I can sell you versus I'm not here to sell you anything.
So it's been a challenge, and it's taken years to develop the messaging away from a sales tactic or a sales initiative. I always say sales is a residual of what I do. You know me, when you're a contractor, if we have the solution for you, we'll recommend it, but I will also recommend if the right solution is not in our house of sales, we will say, go over there. They'll have the right solution for you. If you are in sales and you are doing what's best for the end user, that's where you build the trust, the loyalty, or whatever. You're gonna recommend what's right for me, not what's right for your sales book. And I've always believed that sales is a residual. Like I said, help them get to where they want to go, whether you have the solution or not, and then you'll get the next opportunity.
Right.
And if we can do that, then great.
So on a homeowner side of things, I think that, obviously very much one-off, right?
Correct.
When we start thinking municipalities, let's just touch on those a minute, because that's an area both you and I work in. When you look at the scaling of what some municipalities are doing now, and some are doing it very well, some have a very, great direction going on. And getting back to your messaging about you need somebody to be able to manage these systems, right? For myself, I feel like this is all still a very, very new conversation. Technology, we all know, moves way faster than human capabilities. And I would say the irrigation industry is no different. Are you finding with the few that are out there actually implementing some of these new tech that there's a comprehension on what it actually takes to manage these systems, or are we seeing it as, hey, I'm putting in a smart controller and therefore it's going to do what I need it to do without, touching a couple buttons?
That's also been the challenge. So typically in the past, municipalities have reached out to manufacturers to come in and do a presentation to compare the different systems that are out there. The problem and we love manufacturers. They're great partners of us, and they're
making some great products.
They are.
Yeah.
The problem is they won't tell you the shortcomings of their own product. They're there to sell you their product. So when a manufacturer comes in and says, ours will do this, they may leave out what it won't do. They will tell you everything you want to hear because they're there to sell you their product. In distribution, we can sell everyone's product. So when I sit down with a municipality now, I have developed a matrix, a calculator, if you will. And before I go in and do a presentation for a municipality, I have them weigh 9 categories, whether it's water conservation versus security versus user friendliness, So there's 9 of these categories that they will input to equal 100%. So they may say water conservation is the most important. That's 30% of the 100.
Right.
And they categorize this.
and then out of all the systems you have access to, if that's the most important for them, it gets a higher grade because I know this system can do better on that end.
So I have implemented on that calculation what I think is important to show them how SiteOne rated each of the manufacturers and their offering. And then we come in and do the presentation after they've submitted what's important to them. We put those numbers in to compare what we have and ask them if they agree with what the calculation is spitting out. And it's close.
Yeah.
There's no clear winner. There's just some subtle nuances that change that formula.
Yeah.
And based on their weighting of those categories, and we put it in that calculator at the end of the presentation, it spits out the best solution.
This would be the one for you. Right.
So what's interesting about this is they always start out with, this is what's important. Security is important.
Right.
This is important. And cost and budget is always 10%, 5%, whatever, until and then become more important. Even though they agreed that it was only that important, but after the fact they go, oh, here's the thing. Municipal, and I always use this reference. If I come to Randy and I say, I want to buy a car.
Yeah.
Like, okay, just a car. And I say, yes. You say, here's your Prius. Great car, great reliability, great serviceability. It's a perfect car. I buy the car and then I come to you a week later and I go, wait a minute, but I was taking this over to the Autobahn. I want to do 300 kilometers an hour. And you go, but you didn't tell me that.
Right.
So this is the same thing. In irrigation, there's a lack of knowledge. People don't know what they don't know. And a lot of that is the way it goes out to tender, and we can discuss that later. But people just don't know what they don't know about irrigation. That water-soil-plant relationship, if you're not in the business, you just think it's water. I'm just spraying water. So when you go in to educate, you have to force the answers out of them. You have to get that information from them so that you don't sell them a Prius when they wanted a Ferrari.
Right.
So they always say cost and budget. Once you tailor the right solution, it shouldn't matter the price. This is what's going to get you to where you said you wanted to go.
Right.
Then we can start looking at the budget. Okay, what are you willing to give up?
Exactly.
And here's the real thing with smart controllers. In my presentation,
we not call them that?
I wish we wouldn't call them smart controllers.
Yeah.
Because like smartphones, they make for dumb people.
Technology advanced control systems. There we go.
Right.
Let's use that one.
But on everything listed on the EPA, if you're using internet weather for your source of data to control when it's not watering, you are going to use more water than necessary, because internet weather bases their ET, which is a very high factor in how much water is required.
Yeah.
And for those listening that don't know what ET is evapotranspiration, which is the sum of water loss from evaporation from your soils and transpiration of your plants. That's what the water loss, the moisture loss from the soil profile is that day.
And every area, depending where you are in the world, it has a different factor attached to it.
So I really noticed the difference 3 years ago when we had all the wildfires. And there was that haze. There was that haze. Yeah. It was still 32 degrees. It was warm. But the
UV was
correct. But all these smart controllers that use internet weather are calculating the solar radiation based off of a temperature, which is good, but not necessarily accurate.
Right.
So it's assuming clear skies. So if it's 32 degrees, it must be full solar radiation, but it's not. So you have less moisture loss, but the controller says you do. Therefore, you're wasting water. You're adding water that didn't need to be replenished.
Didn't need to be going on there. So you and I have had arguments on this, and I love our arguments, for the record. There is a challenge in I think large water users to, there are systems out there that you could label a Ferrari. There's others that might be the Cadillac, and there's others that might be the Ford Taurus, right? I have kind of personally taken on a mentality of doing something better tomorrow is a step in the right direction, right? And I, there are systems out there, and not going to name names, that are really, really incorporated water management systems, right? But when we talk about budget, people can have that pipe dream, but then when the rubber hits the road and the dollar value actually gets explored, it's like, whoo, can't afford the Ferrari. Maybe I'm going to the Cadillac. When we think about advancing this conversation, when we actually think about making a difference, right? I know we're going to make a difference through homeowners through messaging. I think municipalities do a wonderful job of that. They get the message out there very early, very aggressively on what homeowners are allowed to do, right? I think that's great, but at the same time, looking in the mirror, not through the window, and not looking to pick on municipalities, but they're a large water user, and it's one we're both familiar with, is, how can we get them to be better tomorrow than they are today? And understanding that it might not be the Ferrari, right? How do we balance that? How do we have that conversation with them so that that education piece can come through?
Interestingly enough, the last municipality I met with, we had this exact conversation. You have to not only educate within so they have a better understanding, and remembering that these systems are just tools to help the water manager in their processes.
Right.
They finally asked, who is that person? Who do we need to invest in?
Yeah.
And we know this. You need someone with passion, that's passionate about the why, not the what we do, but why we are doing it.
Yeah.
And if you can find that and educate that person, they will lead by example. They will take that as a challenge, and they will bring up everyone else within the municipality and say, that's a cool job. I want that. Yeah. Right now, in municipalities, they hire a horticulturalist, or they hire like an irrigation person that doesn't have the passion about water conservation.
Yeah, they fight, a lot of the times they just find somebody internal.
Right.
They're still going to be the ones out there fixing the sprinkler heads and doing whatever else, right? And you're right, it is that passion. I often, number one, hard to find that person.
Very hard.
And that being said, maybe it's not as hard as I think it is, because I'm not sure anyone's actually looking for them either. There's a whole generation out there that I think has a lot better finger on the pulse of what the future of the environment is. And I think we're not tapping into that fully. But how do we, when you do find that person, what does it look like to support them? Like at the end of the day, I don't care whether you're SiteOne, the big corporate company, or a municipality, or grassroots resource optimization, or grassroots landscape and irrigation. When you find those passionate people, and if we're talking about somebody who is passionate about water conservation strategies and management, what does support for that person look like? Because I can just imagine, they're going to feel like they're alone on an island some days.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because it is basically, it's not new, but it's new. There's few people that look at that as a career, but it's coming. I've been saying it for 5-6 years now. It's coming, and that person. Look, I'll share a story with you. Once upon a time, when I was a young man, my dad was a builder, and he said to me, Ken, one day the guy willing to run a shovel is going to make more money than the guy sitting in the office.
Right.
Blue collar is going to make more money than white collar because nobody wants to do it.
Yeah.
We're starting to see that.
Yeah.
So water management strategies, resources, people, education is coming, and it's going to be forced upon us. The problem with it right now, water's cheap. We don't think about it. It's cheap. I add more water to my lawn. It doesn't affect my bill.
It's a bucket cubic meter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So large water users like municipalities are starting to get questioned from higher levels of government. What are you doing? How are you saving? How are you moving the needle? Because let's be honest, right now they only understand restrictions. We have a shortage of supply. Our reservoirs are low. We're restricting Johnny homeowner. You cannot use water. If this fails, water management and education at higher levels, and educating from the top down, including provincial level, federal level, to embrace technologies and processes, people, let's be honest, water management is manager. you need a manager. That's a person. It's not a product.
No.
So until we start investing in this and getting better at it, we're stuck with restrictions. That's our future.
Yeah.
When that fails, we're then going to be forced into an allocation model. Now the government's going to, whether it's municipal level or federal level or provincial level, you're going to get allocated X amount of water because that's all we have.
Yeah.
You're going to meter it. We're going to charge it. When you're done, you're done. And when that fails, they're just going to shut it off.
Right.
You have potable water for household usage. There's no more green space watering. And LEED years ago tried that. And now they were producing footprints that were increasing carbon, not reducing carbon.
Right.
So they have backed away from no irrigation at all. In a semi-arid climate like Alberta, we need our green spaces. Reduce that carbon, that oxygen. Humans need that green space.
Absolutely.
We all want our 20 by 20 front lawn and our house and go sit on it, and it's cooler and trees. So we can't get away from irrigation.
Yeah, at the end of the day, green spaces build communities as well, right?
Exactly.
Right now we're sitting in Medicine Hat, Alberta. Medicine Hat without irrigation is a desert.
Right.
Like we have cactus growing on the coulees. We were fortunate enough to maybe get about 1.5 inches of rain over the weekend, which is really rare for us. The city right now looks as good as it's probably going to look all year.
By the way, 2.09 inches at my house.
Is that what it was?
Yes,
okay.
Over those couple of days.
I thought you would have got more because I also know, so Ken is from Calgary, and the Bow River it was spilling the banks. Right. I know they got a lot more in the Kananaskis, Banff, in the rocky areas, but that opens up a whole other conversation about water management when it comes to managing our reservoirs, releasing the water, holding the water back.
Right.
The risks that others have to take to make those decisions. Right. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty complicated environment right now at a lot of different government levels. You touched on restrictions. So, Elliot and I, the last couple of weeks have been to a couple of AGMs. One was the Bow River Basin and the other one was the Old Man Watershed Alliance. At the Bow River one, so the Bow River runs through Calgary. It's the source of the city's water, all the surrounding communities' water, and then of course comes down and affects Medicine Hat as well. It ties into and becomes the South Saskatchewan where the Old Man and the Bow River meet. Mm-hmm. Twice now I've been at conferences and seminars where I've seen people from the city of Calgary speaking, and City of Calgary last year, when we entered 2024 throughout the province, huge conversations on water availability back in the spring of 24. It was going to be government mandated restrictions, provincial, not municipal. Like it was getting that serious, right? Mm-hmm. Conveniently and abnormally, it rained a ton in May and June. Mm-hmm. Didn't stop almost, right? Those conversations evaporated. Now, City of Calgary, on the other hand, they had the Bearspaw feeder main break. So, they dodged a bullet and then the bullet hit a brick wall. Huge restrictions. Like they made a lot of changes within the city last year on how they were not only treating homeowners, but businesses themselves internally from their green space water management use. I was so frustrated this year when they came out and said, we're doing voluntary restrictions again. Because I thought, here's a city who typically has carried massive weight and influence, I would say not only in Alberta, but across North America. And I was sitting there going, okay, reservoir levels are up a little bit. Snowpack is well below average, which means less water's coming into the reservoir. This is your chance, right? Like this is the chance to be able to say, we're starting everybody with restrictions, ourselves included. And they backed away from it. And I asked two people now, and I said, why did they do that? And they said, the higher ups just, they don't want to rock the boat, right? Once it was said, it's an election year. So, and it is, right? It's municipal election year in Alberta.
Right.
And for me, who has found this passion that you catalyzed, it was like this, the air got let out of my balloon. I was like, so here we are, the perfect opportunity, and nobody wants to take the leadership position to say, we're going to do this and we're going to start with this because we have to do this. Right. Instead, it gets politicized and nobody wants to lose votes. So
I feel your frustrations. I will add that the city of Calgary are trying. They're trying to be leaders. I'm also on the board of the CPCIA, which is the Canadian Prairie chapter of the Irrigation Association. We are now collaborating with the city of Calgary on a water managed sites program.
Was introduced last year.
Yes. And it's a huge undertaking for the city to implement it. But they're listening to industry because, we are unfairly targeted during restrictions. We have a lot of great contractors out there that are learning the processes. They are trying, they're educating themselves and want to make a difference, much like Grow is trying to add that into their lines of businesses. So the city of Calgary is trying. They're working with us. They're collaborating. They're listening. They always promote public engagement, but they're also listening to the CPCIA. There's the makeup of this task force is everything from distribution to contractors to specifiers to designers. So it's a broad width of talent and knowledge. And they're going to school. They're listening and they're learning. And they're trying to step away from just restrictions.
Right. Restrictions to me, it's a fallacy anyways, right? You're going to tell a homeowner you can water Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can water an hour per zone. Well, you and I both know, and maybe part of the audience doesn't know, 1 hour on your system might be 4 times as much water as 1 hour on my system, right? So it's a broken restriction model. At the end of the day, people still aren't educated. They don't fully understand, or a lot don't anyways.
And that's where that smart controller gives people that false, impression that they're making a difference.
Right.
Honestly, those I won't get into brand specifics, but smart controllers are only smart if they're programmed smartly.
Right. It all starts at the beginning.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
The one thing that we recommended to the city was more topsoil. That gives you a larger holding capacity, and essentially we've talked about this ad nauseum with the city. You can have a 100% perfect system, matched precipitation, distribution uniformity, head-to-head coverage. It can be absolutely as perfect as an irrigation system can be, and you can still waste a ton of water through scheduling. So your biggest opportunity to save water is by not turning it on. So especially in our shoulder seasons here in a semi-arid climate like Alberta, our rain comes May and June. The more holding capacity you have, the more water you can hold and get to the next rain event and not use potable water for irrigation is your largest opportunity to save. So if we have more topsoil and we have the smart tools installed, even a homeowner has to be a water manager. They have to take that information from that system and say, can I hold off? My system at my house, we saw the forecast. We knew that rain was coming. I looked at my irrigation controller and it was scheduled to come on. And I looked at my moisture level in my soil and I went, you know what? I am not at close to wilting point. And it was scheduled to come on the night before the rain on that Thursday night. I'm like, I'm turning it off. I global command it.
You know what's coming.
I know what's coming. So even though it was dry prior and it was ready to come on, I made a management decision based on the data that I was seeing from my system and shut it off.
And we did the same thing here. We're in control of a bunch of parks, and we looked at that event coming and said, shut it all down.
But if you're not a manager,
Right.
you're going to let that run and you're going to waste that potable water because that rain was coming in and it was no longer needed.
Right.
Basically, I'm beyond field capacity at that point.
Yeah.
So, but again, that was the process, not the product.
Yeah.
So this is the type of education that we, with passionate people in this industry need to get out there. We need to promote it. We need to get people interested from the government levels down, not from the homeowner up, because water's cheap. A homeowner, if he wasted a residential system, 2 cubic meters of water,
it's $3.
It's $3.
Yeah.
$7 in Calgary. So what? It doesn't make a difference.
No, it's not hurting anyone's pocketbook.
Right. So if we could get to the right people in the provincial level, I would even say the federal level, to start implementing better education in irrigation and the processes, not the products, and invest in people to want to do this, I think that's how we move the needle. I think educating from the bottom up is just not working. I don't have enough time left on this earth to educate from the bottom up.
No, and so you and I were just talking right before we started this, right, about the podcast, and that was the statement I made is we need to find a bigger audience with this conversation, right? Because if you have this conversation with one contractor, one city, one whatever, the chance of actually, significant change happening is very, very small. Mm-hmm. So, getting that message out to a bigger audience every single time is how change is going to happen. So when we talk about education, I want to quickly go back to the spring of 2024 when you upended Randy's nice little life. I'd asked you and Brian from SiteOne as well to join a few of us on a bit of a marketing strategy for grassroots landscaping and irrigation. So for probably a good 1.5 to 2 years prior to that, you had been bludgeoning me about need to get into water management. Well, yeah. I felt bludgeoned. We had a few colorful, conversations about it, right? Yeah. I was what I would still classify as a new business owner. Had been here for 20 years, but bought it in 2020. So I, very afraid to step out of my comfort zone, if we want to call it that. So anyways, we have this meeting back in April of 24, and you completely derailed it, for the record. We did very little to talk about marketing on grassroots landscaping, and you went all in on this. This is the future. This is the future. This is the future. And it was funny. We walked away from that, and Michelle and I had a few conversations. Who ironically now is also one of the founding owners of Grassroots Resource Optimization. We have done nothing to market grassroots landscaping. Thank you for that. But we did start a new company, right? And it really opened my eyes. So number one, I want to thank you for that. And the timing was right. It's funny because when we started the new company, one of the first things we did was you start to create this business model. Right. And as a business owner and a contractor, it's like, okay, well, I need to make money doing this. And we had a good time. We worked with City of Brooks, did a pilot project, very successful. And we ended up really stepping on the gas pedal as far as like, ooh, we have, proof of concept. We're good. We're doing this. And then we realized not too long after that, okay, well, we may be ready. Nobody else is ready for this. When you talk about that education from the ground up, so with City of Brooks, we had incredible buy-in at the ground level from their operational teams. We made their life easier, right? We were saving them water, saving them time, saving them money. But then when the rubber had to meet the road and it hit the right managerial desk, it stopped dead. Like that was the end of it. What we've realized since then is not only do we need to educate others, we need to educate ourselves.
I still learn every day.
Yeah, this is a crazy thing where, putting yourselves in a room with people that are smarter than you, which, typically for guys like you and I isn't that hard.
Agreed.
Agreed. I have learned more about water in the last probably 8 months now than I ever imagined I would, right? And for me, I'm going right to the source. We've completely pivoted from a sales model to an education model and a building trust model with hopeful future clients.
Sales will be a residual
Exactly
of what you do.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it for the why. By the way, you say I derailed that, but I'm only one person that was in that meeting of the 6 people that were in that meeting. So I will defend myself saying that other people were hearing me before you did and help you listen to the message. I will also add, Randy, why do you think I picked you? Why do you think that I kept pushing you? First of all, ton of respect coming from here to your chair. I see you as a leader, and I knew once you got out of your comfort zone with this and you pushed yourself and you started to believe in it, that you would do what you're doing now.
Right.
I need allies in this fight. I need people. I need bigger voices. I need a bigger group of people. I need some masses. So trust me, I've had this conversation with other contractors, and there's the old guard, and you've heard this. I've been doing this for 20 years. Why would I change now? Are you driving the same car you were 20 years ago?
Fine.
Are you using the same technology in your phones as you were 20 years? No, but they just hate change.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is lack of understanding in their own level of understanding in irrigation principles. They're making a good living. They have a good company.
Retirement's on the horizon.
Right? So it's not broke, so let's not fix it.
Yeah.
The problem is if we don't become champions in this fight, government is going to mandate what's going to happen to us. Yeah. So if we can get to that level and you're part of the solution now, not part of the problem, thank you for championing this. Thank you for taking it and running with it.
And you're welcome. And thank you for continuing to, needle on me on this. It's passionate people that are going to make a difference, right? And it's funny because one of the other people that's involved with Grow is Lee LaRose. And it was funny, Lee and I were having a conversation, I guess it would have been last winter. And, Lee contracted at Grassroots Landscaping for over 30 years. And as a contractor that does municipal projects, we often would build a park and then you have to maintain it for 1 year or 2 years and you turn it over to the city and you're going to be judged on everything has to be perfect. And as a contractor, you don't care how you get there, right? You need green, lush grass. Mm-hmm. I'm going to pound the fertilizer. I'm going to pound the water. I do not care what it's going to take for me to get to that end result. And Lee and I had the conversation where we both had our aha moment last year, and it came with Brooks. When we implemented some very, very simple technology, but we managed it properly, we programmed properly, we scheduled properly, and then we started to see the end results and statements from the city, their users of the Quad Diamonds was it's never looked better, yet they were using way less water. And that was Lee and I's aha moment where we went, as contractors, and I've said this several times in people that I've talked to, I was hands down one of the worst abusers of water management ever. And it takes an aha moment to go, okay, how am I going to do better? And you have to lead from the front, right?
Very similar experience. One of my aha moments back in the 90s when I was an irrigation contractor, I would sell that we would use less water because we talked about the brown and soak syndrome. You let your lawn go brown, you go out with your garden hose and your sprinkler and you let that run and you go in for dinner and then you come out and you have a beer with your neighbor and it's running down the street.
Still running.
And that's how we sold irrigation. We would actually save you water. There was a study in Toronto, I can't remember the neighborhood, where they actually assessed homeowners using garden hose and sprinklers versus irrigation. And I remember reading the study, the report that came out from that saying irrigation actually uses more water. And I had to look in the mirror and I'm like, that's me. Because when I installed an irrigation system, I purposely programmed that thing to stay green.
100%.
Because I don't want the call back.
That's how you're going to be judged.
Exactly. Right. So we made sure it watered enough to stay green, regardless of the water usage. And back then I remember reading this study going, oh, no.
There's no way.
Yeah. And realizing, looking in the mirror, that I was part of the problem.
Yeah.
And I needed to change. And that's when I got into the new tech on water management remotely before water conservation.
Yeah.
Because I could see the forecast and I could turn it off for the city on their sports fields and sort of manage it that way. But that was kind of manual. And since then, technology, we talked about before, has come a long way. Yeah. And now we have better tools and data. But that was my aha moment years ago as well.
Yeah. And I think those aha moments are cool, right? Because that's actually, I guess they're cool if you choose to do something with it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have the aha moment, but it's going to take a lot of work. So I think I'll just sit back and I'm doing what I've always done. We'll just keep kind of floating this way, right? You and I, again, earlier were talking about what leadership looks like in this industry right now. And we've had a few funny conversations about you saying you're getting near the retirement age, and I challenge you on that because there's a whole generation out there right now that I think probably is more in tune with the environment than people, you and I at our age. I think we're doing good at our age, but I think we're probably a little bit more unique. What does leadership look like? So you and I, as 51, 59, passionate about this, trying to drive change. You've met Elliot. We were having a good chuckle with him right before we started this. He's 19, just turned 19, right? But he's starting to get it. So how do we lead that next generation? Because if we leave it up to them, I think they look at us, a lot of us, and we're lazy. We think they're lazy, and they look up at us and they think you're lazy too. How do we help them? How do we instead of having this generational divide?
Yeah, I haven't led people from an employee perspective for quite some time. You have to lead without them knowing you're leading. I always say enthusiasm is contagious. So when a young person sees an old geezer passionate about something, leading by example, and I've always led by example. Even when I was a contractor, I would take the dirtiest job, the first one in the year, and I would go do it to show them I'm not asking them to
I did that yesterday.
Yeah.
I went hydro seeding yesterday, spent 10 minutes doing it, but they all know I can do it now. So,
right. Yeah. But I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't done or haven't done.
Yeah.
So when you're enthusiastic and you're passionate about something, they follow along because it's contagious. They want a piece of it. They want to, what is making that old geezer so excited about this tech or this process or this water conservation? What is this all about? Because I think that's how we lead. We lead through education. We lead by example, and passionate people need more like-minded people, and then it will just build. It'll build momentum. There's levels of government that are passionate about this, but they don't know what they don't know. We didn't know what we didn't know until we got our hands dirty, our hands wet, and we learned. We had some failures along the way. We've learned along the way, and it's hard to educate the masses. So we just need to build that excitement around water management. Because right now it's all doom and gloom. Oh, we have less supply, more demand. We're in a housing crisis, so we have to approve more development, and it's just going to grow.
Right. And where's it all coming from?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we can be part of the solution. Irrigation is a large user, more on the ag side, But Rescom gets lumped up into that.
Yes.
Municipalities use a lot of water on their green spaces. That's what the public demands. That's what they want.
Yeah.
So I think we can lead from that level and build some excitement and be part of the solution. And if we get the right people educating everyone on how we can solve this and be part of the solution, I think it'll grow organically. I think that, but we can't push the ball up the hill. We have to get it momentum going down the hill.
Right. And so when it comes to, because I agree, I think we're doing as probably good a job as we can on the educational piece right now. It can always be better when it comes to, possibly municipalities and everything else. I think we can broaden the audience a little bit more. When it comes to the younger ones, though, Ken, you're passionate, you're excited. How often do you get in front of that younger audience? I'm not saying you.
This is the reason I'm sitting here today.
Yeah.
I am not a social media guy. I'm not on social media personally. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram, Snapchat. I don't even know what all those things do.
Right.
And that's how you get to young people. So I'm sitting here today hoping this is the start of, if one young person's listening to this today, going, wow, they're so passionate. Those and I agree with the message. How do I get involved?
Yeah.
Reach out to us.
Right.
We'll help you get involved. When I moved here in 2012, the first thing I did was get involved with the CPCIA.
Right.
I'm not from here. I didn't know anybody. I had to figure out who's passionate about whatever. And it's been a bit of a process. It's been a road. Don't regret it at all. If we can help people get involved that have this passionate, theory about water management, water conservation, get involved with the CPCIA, get involved with water management summits and groups. I'm not a social media guy, so I can't put that word out there, but we could use you. We need allies.
So in March, we did the water management summit, and I totally agree. I think there's unexplored opportunities to get in front of that audience, right? I'm with you. I'm not on TikTok. I do have an Instagram account, but it's mostly just to scroll looking for stupid reels and read the ones my kids send me. I think there's more opportunity there that I think you and I are going to explore in the future. What does that look like, right? Water Management Summit. Let's touch on that a minute. We did this in March. So this was my understanding. I was Grow was a bit of a late entry into this. And I think Watertronics as well. But this was a bit of a passion project for Ken Vowels, correct?
Yes. This is me pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I'm not a TED Talk guy. I said that right in my presentation. I'm not comfortable speaking in front of large groups. I'm not comfortable today, knowing that this is being recorded. This is going to go out there. But I'm pushing myself. And that's the only way I can take my passion and try to get it out there to have further conversations. The work that I do today for SiteOne, every day I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I'm at a table of engineers, and I'm the dumbest guy at the table.
Perfect.
And I'm smart enough to know that if you're uncomfortable, you're probably in the right spot.
Right.
And this is how we lead young people, being passionate and pushing ourselves out and going, you could do this too. And you could do better than me, by the way. You have a bigger audience. You have
right.
The social media contacts. You have this passion, not only for social media and getting mass information out there quickly, but if you are passionate about water conservation as well, and want to make a difference in the world we live in, we need you. We need more people involved, like we said, and next year's Water Summit, I'm excited to add a couple of other presenters, to add bigger voices. We have golf courses that are now doing test pilots on bacteria, not only the water but the soil, and how that a better healthy deeper root zone conserves water.
Exactly. It's an ecosystem, right? Like it isn't just water.
And that's the approach I take in the work that I do. I take a very holistic approach from source water to central control with the irrigation coming out, including pumps and filtration. So from start to finish, much like we have to look at the supply and demand from start to finish. We can make a difference. We just need a bigger audience. We need a bigger platform.
Right.
And this is how we get started. And it's early days, but we have solutions.
So that the water management summit we did in March, it was the main player in that was Advanced Ag, right? Out of I'm going to say Lethbridge. I know they're
Raymond, Lethbridge area,
just south of Lethbridge. And they do bugs in a jug, right? So biologicals, soil improvement, seed establishment. Plus, they do some work in water bodies. So, you had gotten to know Kaylee and Josh, and the Water Management Summit was really built out of a bigger vision on yours, right? Like they kind of did something the year before, and then you had this idea of, okay, how can we make it a little bit more, right? Broaden the conversation a little bit. How did that all take shape?
Advanced Ag is a great company. They're a family-run company. I was first introduced through a Teams meeting. Brian from SiteOne actually met them, and he used it on his backyard and actually fixed his dog spots.
No way.
And he thought, hey, there's a great opportunity for SiteOne to promote this bacteria for the soil called the Live Elite. So I was sitting on this Teams meeting, and they had mentioned that years ago, and they're predominantly into ag.
And they've been around for over 20 years.
They have, yes. So Mom started the company. The
Phyllis,
kids sort of took over, and Mom was really passionate about water quality and fixing bodies of water. And then ag they're a business, right? So that's kind of where the money was coming from. So they had a little snippet in the presentation about bacteria for water, and I'm like, "Whoa, stop! What?
Hang on!"
And I really wasn't that interested in the Alive Elite for the soil at first, until I started, putting all the pieces together, taking that holistic approach. You take a subdivision. There's a development around it, and we're going to fix the water because they're swimming in it, they're fishing in it. And we, biologicals versus chemicals is way better. But then I started thinking about the soil and all these homeowners right around the lake. It's going to rain like it did last weekend, but I'm going to fertilize my lawn, and it's all going to run off.
Guess where it's going.
So then I started thinking about biologics for the soil running into the water, and I was like, oh, it's all connected. It's all, and that's when I really got into pushing them on the water side. I want to partner with you, because I was getting into stormwater with pumps and filtration used for irrigation and central control. And if we can, fix those bodies of water naturally, organically, instead of chemically before it gets atomized into the public, we're onto something here. So they had a water summit. It wasn't really called a water summit. They had invited all their stakeholders that had been using their product to come in for a seminar.
In 23.
And I was invited as a supplier of their product. And it was very scientific. They had the manufacturers there. They had, biologists there. And it's just like, oh, nobody cares how it works. It just works and whatever. And I'm not saying nobody cares, but it was very science oriented.
Right.
And we had talked about it. It was a great event. The people that were there were lake association managers. There was, stormwater people. It was good, but it was just a bit dry.
Right.
And they had learned some lessons from it and said that they wanted to improve on it.
It was their first one.
Yeah. I mean, they've done presentations all over the place, but this is the first one that was sort of come in for a lunch, and we're going to educate you on what the bacteria does. And we had golf course superintendents there. So I said, why don't we take that holistic approach that I have and encompass that into that event. And we started looking at, okay, we have the source water, we have bacteria, we had brought in watertronics for pumps and filtration. We brought in yourself for grow on water management strategies for irrigation. And myself did everything right down to a homeowner level. This is what I do in my own house. I think it was good. I think it will grow from there. I think that as that word gets out, we will bring on other presentations, other people's experiences, much like the pilots on the golf that we're doing this year with it. They're going to have them come in and present on their findings. We have a lake association manager that has been using their bacteria for 2 years with great results. They've hired a limnologist that has done a great report on the health of the lake. And we're going to have him come in and report his findings.
You're not allowed to use big words that nobody understands. What is a limnologist?
Limnologist is basically someone that's taking water samples and studying the lake and the ecosystem of the lake, right? Everything from mineral levels and nutrient loads and sort of the health of the water body. Right. So lake associations that are, that's their meat and potatoes. People bought into that subdivision, into that development because there's a lake to go swimming in.
To be able to use the water body.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
but interesting. So, I thought it went really well. I had a great time up there. I think we had about 50 people attend it, kind of from all different. We had educators, we had municipalities were in attendance. We had golf courses in attendance. We had some designers in attendance, which was also great. So we had a really nice touch point on a pretty good audience. To me, that was my first experience or exposure to what education looks like, right? And the importance of getting that message out there. Since then, I'm excited for the next one. I know there's already some planning going on in the background. And I think it's probably going to grow in attendance number. I think it's going to grow in its impact in what the words and the presentations are going to bring. Right. I had an opportunity to sit down with a lady with the town of Cochrane, just west of Calgary. And, there is somebody who, you want to talk about passion. She's not on the landscape side of things. She's on the municipal end, the environmental utility side. But she manages the water throughout the entire town of Cochrane. That's somebody with that passion that she has who I think very often can at times feel like, as with anybody with passion, you're stuck on this island all by yourself. She's somebody I would just see as a huge valuable resource to be a part of this conversation, right? So I think we have an opportunity with that water management summit to really kind of reframe it and do some workshops. And maybe next year is a little bit different and a little bit bigger, but I'm excited to see where this thing's going to go in how many years, right? So.
You say opportunity, I say responsibility. We have a responsibility to make this grow. play on words, but it needs to grow.
Yeah.
We need the right people at the table. We need some decision makers. We need levels of government. We need people with passion and excitement to build. It's all about the audience.
Yeah.
Like we'll get up there and we'll say our spiel, but if the people in the audience care, this will take off.
Right.
So we need to ensure that we have the right people there. And it's pretty hard not to get excited about this. I obviously have a passion. You have a passion. So we see it.
Yeah.
But when you look at the people that attended, I didn't see anybody leaving early.
Nope.
I didn't see anybody yawning. They were engaged.
Yeah.
So, and we talked about this before the event. We would rather have 50 people, engaged people there versus 200 people that are there for the free lunch.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, this is going to grow. I can't see it not, because if they left that event with some new knowledge, with some new excitement, they're going to tell two friends.
Yeah.
They're going to tell two friends, and so on and so on. And that's the plan.
Yeah.
I think we're all volunteers. We all have our day jobs. We all have. So this is a hard thing to organize to the level where we want it to be. But But if we can get the right people, it will grow organically and it will grow quickly.
Yeah.
My feeling.
It's funny because, you think about, you and I have a passion for this, but I've seen people get introduced into this that had no idea what this was, right? And I'm, I can easily pick on Elliot, someone at a young age, uneducated in this, but he's getting it, right? And then I can also say Michelle, who you've met, who, like, her and I started working together 18 months ago, and this was never on the radar. She knows more about irrigation and water management now than she ever figured she would. Right. And the best part is that, it's now in her brain. So there are so many times she is out now, whether it's she's on Nanaimo on Vancouver Island. She's always seeing these incredible opportunities, right? So right now she's working on educating grow on the Okanagan Valley, right? Which is a big place for water conservation strategies. But it is exciting when you see these transformations take place in people, and it is
you included. You're one of them.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's fun because you start to build a little bit of a community, right? So, I mentioned earlier, Ellie and I went to the BRBC and then the OWC AGMs the last couple of weeks. You take that combined with the Water Management Summit and a few other things I've attended over the last several months, you're starting to see familiar faces, right? There's a lot of the people that are part of these touch points. And so I got really excited because I'm like, oh, they're starting. If I'm recognizing them, guess what? They're also recognizing us. Mm-hmm. And that is what starts to build that trust relationship when they know you're not just there to make a buck. I find it so hard as a business owner. You know where I'm going with it.
You're right. I had to push real hard before the summit, before we went to that summit, that this was educational. Yeah. This is not a sales tactic. Yeah. We're not going to put our banners up. We're not going to have demos on the table and you can buy this, you can do this or whatever. This is education. We're a resource. We're educating today. Yes, we all have businesses. Yes, we all want to sell stuff. Yes, but only if it makes sense.
Right.
So we have to let them decide whether they want to take the next level. This is not a trade show. This is not, this is purely educational. And I think as long as we maintain that mandate, we're on the right track.
Yeah.
As soon as it's about sales, it becomes greasy. It becomes, you're just trying to sell your stuff. I just want to solve some problems. And I think as long as we do that, we'll be okay. But you have to pull back on some people because we are entrepreneurial. We are selling stuff. What maybe it's solutions, and we happen to have that's the one thing I will say about SiteOne. And it took a while, but SiteOne, when I go out and do the why we're doing it, not the what we're doing it, I've always said sales is a residual of what I do. The sales come because now they trust me. I didn't try to sell them something. Yeah. I educated them and let them make their own decisions on what their next steps are. SiteOne's a huge company. We have pretty much everything that you need to implement said solutions. And if we don't, we're happy to recommend where you can go and get them.
Yeah.
We're a resource. That was tough within a distribution model.
You're asking someone to shift a mindset on you. They see you coming in that shirt. Yeah. And you're a salesman.
Yes.
Right? It just does not matter. So that happens over time.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
And that happens going in and saying, I'm actually not here to sell you anything. Mm-hmm. I want to learn. Right? Mm-hmm. And we had that moment too.
Absolutely.
And I've actually enjoyed it way more. I've made more comments. I hope my accountant's not listening. Where, it's like, I don't care when we make money at this. Right now, I feel I'm doing this because I feel it's the right thing to do.
Right.
It just is absolutely 100% the right thing to do. The amount I've learned in the last 8 months, it's like, if money comes out of this one day, great. Mm-hmm. If not, maybe someday at some point, someone's going to go back and go, well, at least they were part of the conversation. Right. I get excited being able to see other people pick up this torch a little bit and move a little bit with it. Right. I saw Elliot go through a site assessment and some programming and scheduling, and, you know, this understanding now of why he's doing what he's doing, for me to be able to push him and say, okay, well, yeah, you need 15 minutes on that zone, but it's a spray zone. Elliot, go for a drive, sit there, run it, see when the runoff starts, right? Let's figure out what a cycle and soak is. Most people don't even know what a cycle and soak is.
Right.
As a contractor, I'd never implemented cycle and soak. Hilarious, actually. Last night we're sitting around talking about this with as a family. And my wife, Leanne, she goes, I've never heard you use the word cycle and soak before. 20 years, she's never heard that word come out of my mouth, right? I've known it exists.
They've been in every controller for
ever.
Yes.
Right. And so, but it was really cool, and we've implemented on all our sites now. And something so trivial, so simple. But when we go back to that, it starts at programming, it starts at scheduling, it starts at understanding, right? So when I see my 19-year-old son go out and do these things with an understanding of why it's now happening, that's huge. Huge.
Yep.
It was like this incredible, warm, fuzzy moment for me. Not only as, you know, the dad, but also as somebody who's like trying to drive this change.
We're farmers. We plant a seed.
Yeah.
And as long as we keep watering that seed, it will grow. It will grow into something.
Yeah.
And then they'll plant a seed. Elliot will plant seeds. It will grow. It's contagious. Enthusiasm is contagious. So as long as we keep watering what we planted,
things will, and we might not be around there to sow or to reap the harvest either. Right.
Yeah.
But at some point, little synapses are going to start clicking in the right area.
As humans, we can live with without a lot of things in our lives. Water's not one of them.
No, isn't that the truth? So, you know, let's quickly talk on source water. Okay. I'm educating myself right now on how the water gets from A to B, right? I've always looked at it from an end user standpoint. So I looked at an end user solution. What I'm also learning now is there are a lot of issues at the source that are causing the issues downstream. So yes, we can come up with a solution as an end user. What can we do now for some of the bigger improvements at the source? Have you toyed in the source water side of things, like as far as really educating yourself on, you know, snowpack reservoirs? What is that? The South Saskatchewan River Basin, right?
I'm just learning that about that aspect now. That's a specialty in its own.
Big time.
And that's a huge responsibility for a municipality.
Yeah.
Because they have to predict what the snow melt is, the snowpack, and how quickly it's melting, and how much to capture and when, because they have flood mitigation, they have all those sorts of things, and learning about snow pillows and all those things that measure to give them that data. Again, those are all just tools to help them make a decision. Yeah. When to hold back, when to let it go. So I've learned a bunch of things. Years and years ago, I was at Toronto Congress, and I remember there was a question. And it was asked to the public, and I'll ask you today. I'll ask you the same question, because this has stayed with me forever. How much less water do we have on this planet than we did, say, 8 million years ago?
You want a number?
Yeah, I guess. Top of your head. How much
40%.
I remember the answer shocking me too. We have the exact same amount of water on this planet as we did 8 million years ago. It doesn't change. The supply is infinite. Fresh, usable water is way less. So what goes up must come down. Right. Rain, evaporation, all. So we have the same amount of water, just the fresh,
not
usable
the source
water.
of it.
We're moving it. We're using it and abusing it and putting it elsewhere. and we don't have the same amount that's ready for intake by humans or animals or whatever. So we're just changing the makeup of it, but we have the same amount of water. Just we've abused so much of it that now we're concerned about what's available for human consumption.
Right.
So that was years ago that I learned that, and I've been trying to wrap my head around that forever.
Yeah, it's going to take me a while. I'll be thinking about that one for a bit.
Like, unless you take it to space and throw it out the window, but it probably comes back down too.
Right.
Anyways, what I've learned in the last year, I will say, working with the City of Calgary on the Water Managed Sites program, is the sensors and the data in the mountains to make management decisions. I'm like, well, we're just letting it all go by. It's all going down the bow and down whatever and into the ocean. Why aren't we capturing more? But there's an impact downstream of every user. And I finally came to understand this year was you can only, City of Calgary, 1.3 million people-ish, whatever it is now. Yep. It's growing exponentially. When the city pulls that water and they're putting it back in and they're saying, okay, but you could drink that water coming out of the plants, out of the treatment plants. Well, then we're just using it and putting it back. So what's the problem? But apparently that river has to have X amount, a percentage of fresh water untouched, to make it available to the next city, to the next city, to the next city of unused water. Even though it's drinkable, it has to be fresh water, whatever. So you can only take a certain percent.
I saw a crazy stat, actually. So heavy rains on the weekend, flows are way up. I was just at the South Saskatchewan. It's like highest we've seen it all year.
Right.
South Saskatchewan ends up by Saskatoon, or if not in Saskatoon, I'm not entirely certain, but I was looking at the flows here and they were going to peak at like 800 cubic meters a second.
Right.
They were going to peak in Saskatoon at 80. So you think about that, right? That's how much it's diminishing by the time, but that's still an end user.
Right.
They still need the water.
Right.
Right. And I think there's often this misconception that, just because we're close to the source doesn't mean we get the unlimited use of it. Like, do we not as a society have an obligation to make sure that others downstream of us have access to this, what is not an infinite resource, although now you've messed with my head on that. So thanks. But, that they have access to this resource as well. Like, instead of just saying, well, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, good luck, you're after me. Best of luck.
Yeah, and that's a completely different level. I'm kind of learning and I'm listening, but it's not my forte. Nope. That's not my focus. My focus is what I really know and what I'm passionate about, and that's irrigation water usage. And how we can make a difference as an industry, because we haven't done a good job in our industry on water management, water conservation, particularly. So I'm really trying to educate at that level and leave supply and demand to the people that study this, that manage that and are passionate about that. It's too much to do every level of it.
Yeah.
So I try to stay focused on that, but it is fascinating.
Yeah, no, and it's educational, right? Doesn't mean we're going to learn it all. I've sat at so many tables with scientists now that it's like, you can't even comprehend this. Although you also have moments where it's like, wow, I just went back to like grade 7 science class. I wish I would have listened a little better then. Who inspires you today? So Ken, at 59 years old, you've continued to have your little aha moments, but who or what inspires Ken to just keep being excited?
Oh, this is going to sound lame. People like you.
Oh.
When you can sit down and have this type of conversation with someone, that's inspiring. You're not alone. People are listening. In the past, you just feel like you're droning on and you're preaching a message and it's not being heard and whatever. But people are listening, and that is what keeps me going. That is what keeps me passionate about this. Because if it just died on the vine, I wouldn't be like this today. But whenever you educate someone to a point where they then take a next step for their path.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me going. If I'm sitting down with a municipality and they have an aha moment, or they learn something that you've just educated them on, or they didn't look at it quite that way, and it's now going to help them on their path to being better. That's what keeps that keeps me going. That keeps me passionate. That inspires me. I don't know how, like, it's the process. It's doing it day in and day out in my job, and the company that has afforded me the opportunity to go do this and still do my job and still move the needle for that company. It's really rewarding.
That's awesome. Retirement one day, but Ken's never going to retire from this, right?
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I have a plan.
Yeah.
And if the world doesn't go, completely nuts and go upside down, maybe this becomes a traveling show on water.
Traveling show. It's like a circus some days. So let's be honest.
As long as I'm passionate and enjoying what I'm doing, I'll probably do something.
Yeah.
But we'll stay tuned. We don't know what tomorrow brings.
And I know you challenged me over the last few years, and I'm going to continue to challenge you going forward because, there's John Maxwell, somebody who I've read and listened to and had an opportunity to meet. He has a statement that he uses destination disease, right? And I think often we get stuck in this mentality of, I got to get to retirement. But when I see somebody like you, I'm like, you've got way too much to offer to think that you're going to dead stop one day. So I'm going to be challenging you in the future. You're going to get to do some more of the things you like to go and do, which is go fish on those beautiful rivers we were earlier talking about. But we're going to be pushing you to keep getting that message out there, right?
Well, the book that I read that still holds true today was back in the early 2000s. Trying to remember the author, Jennifer something. Anyways, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. Pushing yourself out of that comfort zone, you're in the right spot when, and I'm more of a recluse than you would imagine, and I am more of an insecure person than you would imagine. And every day I have to push myself to be who I'm not, to follow my passion.
Yeah.
So it's been a grind.
It's work.
It is work.
Like, and maybe that's a message for anybody out there listening. I don't care what age you are, is that if you are passionate about something, number one, you're lucky. Right. Mm-hmm. If you have something you love and you're passionate about and you get an opportunity to work in it, you're the luckiest person alive because you really never go to work any day. But growing and developing and continuing to become a better version of yourself, that takes incredible intentionality and an incredible amount of hard work. And it can be exhausting some days. So, it doesn't come easy.
It does not.
But valuable people like yourself and putting yourself out there to go and do that and bring this message forward is just super exciting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the future has for you, for me, and for us together.
The partnership.
Right? Yeah. The partnership, exactly. Because I think, a message together is way stronger than a message alone. And I think that's one of the big areas with when we talk about this conservation and sustainability and water management is how is that message getting delivered? And I think if more people are consistently saying it shoulder to shoulder, then there's going to be more people listening too. So, Ken, I want to ask you to close on one thing. You are a man of many quotes.
I didn't realize I was, but
you may have been quoted in previous presentations, photo and everything. Is there one quote that rings true to you that, kind of is a bit of a guiding principle?
First of all, I didn't coin the quote. I adopted it from, believe it or not, a manufacturer, but I live by it. And if it's the one I think you're referring to, it is you simply cannot manage what you don't measure. So water management, what's a management? You need a manager. If you're in management, you're managing people, you're managing resources, but it's a process, it's a manager. All the other stuff is just measure, data to help you make the proper decision as a manager. So you can't manage what you don't measure.
Yeah, and I do love that quote. For the record, I think the manufacturer, whoever it was, stole it as well. It was, I think I've researched this. I have, seriously. And I think it actually goes as far back as Peter Drucker, who was one of the influential business leaders and teachers from many, many decades ago. Because it's in life, right? You know, we can talk about water. Mm-hmm. You can't manage what you don't measure. It's the same with our personal bank accounts. It's the same with business. And you have often said that, you know, again, a statement that I love how you make is you can't, you know, do you just let your bank account exist? Right. No, mm-hmm. you actually pay attention to it and manage it. And
I made that reference in my presentation at the Water Summit.
You did.
You know, that comparison. And we all do it without even thinking now, but why not water? Right. We just use water, and it's because it's cheap. Yeah. We just use it. We don't think about it, because if you use 3 extra cubes that month, it makes no difference on your bill.
No.
But, you know, the larger the water user, the more that affects their pocketbook. So they start to care a little bit more. But at the homeowner level, the tools are out there to manage your water in what you're using in your house. Yeah. You have an 18-year-old boy that's having 45-minute showers. Like, we have the tools to show that. Like, hey, dude, like, get out of the shower. Right?
Dial it back.
Yeah, we're going to start charging your room and board.
Yeah.
So the tools are there if you care.
Yeah.
So we just need to care.
And I think that's the perfect place to lead this off. Is everything we're doing between you and I with this, with water management, some with the conversations we're having every single day, it's to really change the culture of what we're talking about, right? We are trying to create people that care and continue that hard fight. I'm looking forward to supporting you. I'm looking forward to your support. I'm looking forward to way more exciting collaborations in the future. There's going to be some exciting things going on. And yeah, I appreciate everything you're doing. And I definitely appreciate the fact that you came and you sat in that chair. Cause I know that was not something you were incredibly looking forward to, but I hope you enjoyed it.
You know what? Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you on this and partner with you. It's been, way more exciting, and you've been way more engaged than I thought you would be. When you finally agreed to go into this, I got to say, you've put both feet forward. You've gone like out of this world compared to what I thought you were going to do. I thought you were going to dabble. I thought, because you were so reluctant at the start. Yeah. It's been a pleasure to watch the growth in a short amount of time in this new company venture of yours. So congratulations.
Thanks.
And thank you for involving me in today. It's been fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. That was a great conversation we just had with Ken. It was exciting getting together and really being able to dive a little deeper into what water management looks like. I would say if any of you out there are interested in continuing this conversation, be sure to reach out to Ken or myself. LinkedIn is a great place to find us. Thanks for joining today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.